Hi, welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions. This is episode 125. I'm Katherine Bird, and I am so excited to be here with Michelle Hawk. We've taken a big hiatus for the summer, and we're finally back with some new episodes for you. And in this episode, we are going to talk about toxic ascension culture. And if you have been exposed to the spiritual communities out there, and you probably have, or you wouldn't be here, you probably know a little bit about what we're talking about, but we really want to get into this specific subset of our spiritual communities. Hi, Michelle.
Mhm. Hi, Kat. So good to be back here with you. Thanks, everybody, for your patience as we've been taking the summer off to work on a lot of other projects. So here we are. We're back.
Yeah.
Oi. So, yeah, toxic ascension culture. Kat, like we were having a conversation about this recently, which is how this topic came up as being on the list for us to talk about. And I'm wondering what's on your heart as we're delving into this, because like we had a pretty interesting chat the other day that led us to talk about this.
Well, I think so. This is my lived experience of this, where I will be involved in something or at an event or having a conversation with someone or reading something on, social media. And I am at the exact same moment experiencing, yes, that's true. And yes, I understand that. And yes, maybe that's even the way that I work in some way. And yes, that's right. And also, wow, I feel weird and gross. And like, this doesn't fully resonate with who I am and where I'm at, even though it's true, or I have some of those same beliefs. And it's such a strange experience inside my body to be having those two pieces at the same time.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally get it. I have kind of a similar sensation, which and in our conversation the other day, we were talking about how, hearing somebody talk about like a very well-meaning, well-intentioned person talk about, ascension in the quantum field or the fifth dimension or whatever, like from some people, I can hear that and have like yeah, I get that response. And then some people, I hear them say that and it's like some sort of really yucky response. And I was trying to figure out what the difference is. The best, or like why I have that response from some people and not from others. So, Kat and I have conversations about not actually, you know what? We actually don't really have a lot of conversations about ascending to the fifth dimension. Like, I don't know if we've ever had that conversation. So yeah, shaking her head. No, and it's something about that just feels very. I think the part that rubs me so the wrong way is that the people that I have that reaction to, I see or I perceive as using that as an escape or avoidance mechanism to not be present with some of the more uncomfortable aspects of being on an Earthwalk.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things I think really bugs me about it.
Yeah, I think that for us, I'm gonna pull you into my sphere here as far as being animistic, shamanistic, earth medicine practitioners, that this idea around ascending away from the physical and the elemental, the animal, the aspects that are really connected to the earth plane, I just doesn't hold a huge excitement for me, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm even of the internal experience when people are like, I just never want to come back here again. I want to become so awakened that I can transcend to another place and never have to have earth again. When I think of that, I actually don't really feel that way. I think, oh, like whenever I come to earth, it that feels so good. I love it here. I love it here so much. And there's so much pain and suffering and confusion and overwhelming intensity in this experience. And I'm okay with that in some way. And yet at the same time, a huge part of my purpose is the evolution of consciousness. and to
Mm-hmm.
transcend, to help people transcend their personal suffering and pain and illnesses and things that are keeping them from realizing their true God, goddess, divine, true nature and identity.
Yeah.
So I'm hosting both of those things at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Well, you are a bridger of worlds, really. And so thank you for doing that in this case as well. Yeah, I hear you. I think I haven't really heard anyone describe it from the perspective of, gosh, I really don't want to incarnate again. But I've heard people use the perspective around, um, like there's many different language or different like lexicon around this of like, creating the golden dawn, which is, an alchemical term, and among some of these other societies around transmutation and creating heaven on earth and earth as heaven. And these are, again, things that I do buy into. But the thing where people kind of lose me in that is when they're talking about it as though it's somewhere else. And
Mm-hmm.
from my perspective and my opinions and my teachings, from my teachers that I've received, and also from the transmissions that I've received in direct connection with the divine guides, is this is it. This living temple planet Gaia is heaven on earth, and earth as heaven. We're already here. And
Yeah.
it's not, any ascension isn't about going somewhere else. It's about deepening into love ever more, with ever more presence. And it's about creating and devoting to beauty and to truth and to sovereignty and to deeply respecting life itself, and letting the Garden of Eden be reborn and reactualized through our earth itself, through Gaia herself. And so then the whole idea of like, well, where do you think we're actually going when you talk about going to the fifth dimension? Like it's not somewhere else. It's
Right.
here. It's
Right. So I
this.
think what you're
Yeah.
describing, a lot of people would go, well, that's it. Right. That's it. But yet when we hear people talk about it, that doesn't sound like what they're saying. It sounds like almost a little bit of the Armageddon fetish that a lot of evangelical Christians have, of, oh, well, we need to create this situation so Jesus will come back, and this
Mm-hmm.
and this and this are going to happen, where we're now going to live in this, they call it this time of peace, which interestingly arises out of the destruction of most of the humans on the planet, actually. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very strange relationship that I think that Western people have to what is this transcending, ascending, arising away from the lived experience of the earth. I think one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I have trouble with is that there becomes just in the same as this Armageddon fantasy, there is a big us and them, because some of us who are these lucky privileged people who have been lucky enough to be exposed to meditation and yoga and sound bowls and whatever else we've been exposed to, somehow we of this privileged class are going to ascend away from those that just they just didn't get the download.
Mm-hmm.
And so within that just feels very like plucking the privileged out of this huge, huge population of humans that are on this planet.
Yeah. It's like a new age version of the rapture,
Exactly.
right? Right. If you're holy enough, and if you have prayed and you have devoted your life to whatever cleansing and purification or prayer it has been deemed worthy, then you get to have the rapture where you get to ascend to heaven, etc., and all the other poor schmucks don't. So yeah, you're already starting to get into this, but my next thought around this is like, okay, well, so why is this harmful? Because we're calling this episode toxic ascension culture. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I really, and let me be clear, you know, Kat, with what you're prefacing of like, yeah, I get that. And in some senses I do buy into that. Same with me. I do get it. I get why people are talking about ascension, the evolution of consciousness, coming
Mm-hmm.
into our highest vibration, into our most divine selves and walking as divine embodied beings here in this Earthwalk. I totally get it, and I'm on
Yes,
board
and
with
for
that.
that, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
But
great, awesome, all of that. Yes, please. And also, again, it's there's the light side of that and there's the shadow side of that. There's actually some potentially really harmful or really dangerous ideas that we're starting to get into as to the toxic aspects of that. So let's keep going. You were talking about the
us and them,
privileged few. Yeah, the
yeah.
us and them. That would definitely be one piece of the
because
toxic
there's
part.
because I think that's toxic for both of those groups of people, where it's like, if now I am hosting this identity that now I'm the super spiritual person and I'm above all of these people, then in some ways it causes me not to engage with them, to not engage with the suffering of humanity, to not care about what's going on with other people, to separate myself and to project onto other people a lot of stuff. But then it also is becomes this thing where if someone is not experiencing bliss and hyper happiness all the time, which is sort of the projection of this culture, that they're doing something wrong or there's something faulty and broken in them, and they're going to be left behind. They're not going to
Mm-hmm.
make the fifth dimensional leap. They're not going to hit the timeline.
Yeah. There's all these fun like lexicon of words around this, right? They're not going to catch the spaceship, but the you know this other piece that is kind of tangential to what you're talking about is seeing this almost like, oh, poor you, feeling like, oh, I'm so much better than you, you're not going to make it, like pat on the head toward these people. Is that then if someone is buying into this toxic ascension culture, if something were to come up in their own life where they're experiencing real loss, or they're forced with, you know, to confront difficult conversations, or they're something's happening in their lives that is uncomfortable, they're not going to have a healthy and grounded context to be able to relate to that in a conscientious way. They might not be able to have difficult conversations with loved ones. They might not be able to set effective boundaries that are flexible and semi-permeable, right? It might just be someone I disagree with is challenging me, like my partner wants me to, you know, contribute financially to our life together, but you know, they are perceiving, or I'm perceiving that as them keeping me from my higher purpose, so I'm just gonna, you know, dump them and, you know, continue to live out of my van, whatever. And I'm making like very unfair generalizations here, I recognize that. Like that's not true of everyone, and yet it's the like the the assignment of this is good, meaning I get to ascend, this is bad, meaning it stays behind. It creates a total inability to engage with anything that someone is assigning as to be not totally of the light and love.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Mm-hmm.
think then it also opens up this opportunity for people to feel like that bad things shouldn't happen to them, that there
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be pain and grief and loss in this life. And that happens. And so then it can set people up to have a different experience of that, or to separate themselves from their spiritual community when they're struggling, when they actually need to be asking for help and support.
Mm.
And so I think that that could be really a place where people are challenged. And I think the other piece is that because of this privilege piece around it, it also seems to be tied in sometimes to financial abundance. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you can access the 11th dimension, then you will be accessing the infinite universal abundance of all. And then you will be pulling that through your system and you will be accessing abundance. And so we have so linked up this idea around abundance and this this spiritual financial link that I think it can be really detrimental to people because stuff happens. You know, there are
Mm-hmm.
highly, highly, highly spiritual people, spiritual beings who are currently living in war zones
Mm-hmm.
on this planet. And in this way, it's almost like, well, what are you going to say? There's no highly spiritual beings in a war zone right now because they're experiencing really horrible stuff at this very moment.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
what
I
we're
think that's a really,
because we're in a stable environment.
yeah, that's a really important piece of like, what do the 3D circumstances of your life look like? And, you know, for all of the law of attraction evangelists out there saying, you're not manifesting hard enough, that's why your life sucks. Okay, like, yes, we, you know, it's the yes and thing with all of this. Yes, our vibrations corresponding to our thoughts, word, actions, etc. And also shit happens. So, you know, I really I want to link in also a piece that is kind of tangential to what we're talking about is the implications of this on our relationship to service and social justice. Because for people, you know, there's also this toxic piece that I see, and Kat, you were kind of alluding to this around um, you know, a certain amount of entitlement and selfishness that comes with relating to Ascension culture as this thing that I do for myself that I have to earn, and I have to be pure enough, and I have to make sure that I'm okay, and I have to cut out any negative influences that might keep me from being in the most high vibration. Well, how does that help you help other people? It doesn't. How does that make you accessible to you know, to our loved ones who might be suffering, or to being available to support a friend who's having a hard time, or to take a stand and take action, or to even just express an opinion about a social justice matter or about these global conflicts that we're seeing? It's somehow like, oh, I'm not going to mar my vibration by acknowledging that there are armed conflicts and war zones happening all over the world. Like, that's somehow makes me less pure, less holy, less enlightened to acknowledge the existence of conflict and suffering. And I think that's really sad, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it opens up the like a separation, an internal separation, a separation of
Mm-hmm.
self, which is the opposite of where we want to go in healing work, where we want to have all of our parts and everything coming into wholeness and acceptance and love and compassion and understanding for every part of self. And I think in some ways that being able to move out into the world and have that for everyone else at the same time. But if you have to separate yourself, if you have to separate your empathy or your anger sometimes from yourself in order to project an outward expression of hosting this vibration, then that just means that you're denying parts of yourself and not being comfortable with parts of yourself that feel uncomfortable
Mm.
because they're not, you know, whatever, ascending parts.
Yeah,
My ascending parts.
right. Yeah, then that separation happens internally as well.
Right. And that internal
Yeah.
separation then I think over time can lead to perhaps this is what we feel when we feel some of these people and we are like, why does that not resonate exactly? Where
Hmm.
there's a dissociatedness inside of it.
Yeah. That's a really great point, is like, why does it make a, why are we cringy about it? You know, because like I said, there are some people that I can hear that from and be like, okay, I buy into that and I agree with you. And then some people that I don't. So you're saying like we're feeling their inner incongruence. and
Mm.
responding to that. Anything else you want to add about like why that might be feeling really cringy?
I don't know.
I mean, many reasons.
I'm sort of working it out as we speak as far as what that is. But maybe that is one of the pieces that we're that
Mm-hmm.
internal separation and dissociation and the projection of identity,
Mm-hmm.
where we all know the strange where the voice gets really high and whispery and sort of has this sing-songy sort of thing that goes on, and
Yeah.
and it's sort of like when somebody does a lot of work on their face and you look at them and you're like trying to figure out why that it doesn't match what they're saying. So it's um this change in the vocal tone and inflection that is supposed to fit this identity that sometimes
Mm-hmm.
feels a little bit off-putting, I think, for me. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
you'll see this when they make fun of all the like the trad wife stuff that's out there. Do you know what I'm talking
Had
about?
way?
The trad
No, what's that?
wife. So
I have
there's
no
this
idea what you're
whole
talking about.
cultural thing around trad wife, which means traditional wife, and it's like a lot of these women that are sort of cosplaying the 50s housewife and teaching their children to behave that way, and it's all about following your husbands and doing everything they say, and taking care of the kids in the home, and being in this traditional role. And there's a lot of women who are changing their vocal tone, right, to make it
Mm-hmm.
really really sweet and soft and light and airy and juvenile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I call that like you're talking about the high pitched whispery tone. I call that like the guided meditation voice.
Right. But you just use them
Right.
all at the time.
Right, exactly. Imagine you are drifting into a lake of calm. Yeah, but every moment of the
I
day.
mean, if that's
We
your authentic voice, you do you. But
right.
um, you don't have to behave in any kind of way to be spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
You can, whatever. You can curse. You can wear regular clothes. You can have a cocktail. You can do all kinds of things, normal human stuff, and still be highly spiritual.
You know what's really funny? I was wearing a different shirt earlier and I thought, gosh, I should change because this shirt is too boring.
I mean, I changed
So
my shirt because I didn't wear my sweater that had the little pills and everything on it, that I just like my everyday sweater.
yeah, I was wearing my like everyday like wool shirt and I was like, something else might look a little nicer on camera, but we
Right,
can wear sweaters with pills and still be spiritual.
right. But
Yeah.
you wear normal clothes to go to the dark dog park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wear like my everyday like this is a total tangent here, but like my everyday outfit is like I don't know, like field biologist gym rat goes to a rave. Like that's what I look like most of the time. Is between my
It's
like
very colorful.
very colorful, but all sweat wicking and like industrial strength rubber boots for trekking through the swamp, and like really great raincoat. So that is my normal,
Yeah.
normal outfit. And I have things that actually like I really enjoy that I wear when I'm not covered in mud or might get jumped on by a dog. But I spend a lot of time outside, so there's
Yeah.
that.
Tangent. I mean, I
Tangent. I want to come.
spent a lot of time in my like biker jacket and like men's button up shirts and weird ties and stuff. So
Yeah.
there's there is space for all of us, for every part and every expression of us inside of being a spiritual human.
Hmm.
And
I
I
want to go
think
back
we
to one.
get lost from that sometimes.
Yes. I
Like we
want to
just
start. I want to start. What?
like we just joined a club and now we have to act and behave and dress and do very particular things in order to stay in the club.
Oh, right. The spiritual dress code, all white and feathers. And I mean, I love feathers. Don't get me wrong. Feathers and colors and shawls. Like, and if that's your authentic, awesome expression, great. One other piece that I feel like, back to the whole why does it make us cringe thing. I feel like people, and this I think is informed by my shamanic orientation. And Kat, I'm looping you in here too, of, through shamanic practice and through the really like earth-based practices and the animistic practices, and even, things like alchemy and some of these other traditions, that which is dark or the shadow realm is honored and embraced, and we have a healthy context for it.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of people like that. Another aspect of the toxic ascension culture that feels really cringy is people blaming the shadow for being in the dark, or putting blame upon not, pain and suffering and people going through difficult experiences or uncomfortable situations, and assigning it as bad or wrong because they don't have a relationship with a healthy context for things like death and loss and grief and anger and all of the dark aspects. And yet in shamanic practice and in alchemy, we have a whole suite of teachings regarding how to be in right relation with the underworld, how to be in right relation with suffering, and how to pray with our ancestors, how to pray with the divine beings, how to form relationships with psychopomp guides so we can connect with the other side in the underworld. And I think that's really, really important. And people who don't have that, who either fear that which they don't understand, they fear the underworld, they assign it, they make it bad or wrong, they're negating this massively powerful force that is fundamentally necessary because it is part of this balance of light and dark, life and death and rebirth, all expansion and contraction. You cannot have expansion without also having contraction, because that is how the laws of the universe work.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think some
You
of
have
this
a video, Kat, you have a video about like you can't just keep opening, right?
can't just keep opening. Yeah, that's a good one. It's
Yeah.
on my personal channel. You can't
Mm-hmm.
just keep opening, and that's a really important one, and especially looking at medicine work and how we keep going back to medicine and ceremony over and over again.
Yep.
Um, but I think some of this arises, this intersection between privilege and white supremacy and spirituality and the uh, the legacy of Christianity and our having been so involved Western people for such a long time in Christianity and purity culture, and our transposing that onto spirituality and spiritual practice, and divesting ourselves from the totality of self and the totality of consciousness. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is where some of this comes from, and why we engage with it, that why it feels so normal for us to engage with our spirituality in this way instead of accepting the underworld and the shadow, because there is such a long stemming where it's been beaten into us, it's been terrorized into us about the darkness, the shadow, the devil, the demons, the ugly things, the ugly people, the witches and the darkness and the things that are disturbing, being something that we need to fight against in order to be good enough to get to go to heaven.
Right.
So I think within this, we get to then really start to look at our past, look at our lineages, and look at where we might be bringing some of these thoughts and beliefs that we have about our spiritual practice, or what it means to be spiritual, or where we're going with our spiritual practice, what's the point of the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
um, where we might be projecting from where we came from, what we were raised with, or what our lineages have brought to us.
Yeah. That's great. Let's talk about other recommendations for people to look at like their own relationship to evolution of consciousness, ascension culture, etc. Looking at our lineages, looking at our programming, that's great.
Yeah. And
What
like
else
what
do you
it
want to invite people
means,
to?
right? The identity parts, right? What
Yeah.
does it mean for you to be a spiritual person? What does it mean to have a spiritual practice? When you have that practice, or you're part of a spiritual community, what is the
Mm-hmm.
identity that you're taking on? And
Yeah.
why? Why do you desire to host that identity? What
Mm-hmm.
attachment do you have to that identity, as much as anything else? A lot of times in spiritual practice, we're looking at our identities and looking at different parts of self, and looking at things that we've been holding on to that maybe aren't serving us, or that aren't us, they're social conditioning. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important even to deconstruct our spiritual identity. Really go,
Yeah.
oh, what am I getting out of that? Why am I needing that to have that identity? What does that mean to me? And what value am I placing on that?
Mm-hmm. That's really great. Yeah, that's a great recommendation. I want to piggyback on top of that and say, inviting people to look at the way that their spiritual identity manifests in their lives in all of these different areas. So, looking at, okay, your spiritual identity and your values, of which are XYZ, how does that show up in your relationships? How does your spiritual identity show up in your home? How does your spiritual identity show up in your finances? How does your spiritual identity show up in your work? How does it show up in your service? And looking at, okay, are there any disconnects there? Are there any areas that don't make sense? Okay, say I'm a spiritual person where my values are compassion and integrity and love and respect, and yet when I come home from work, I get in a fight with my partner and lock myself in my room and watch Netflix, for example. Okay, so is there a disconnect between
Totally been
looking
there.
at who, yeah, right. And that doesn't mean that, like, okay, you're not a spiritual person if you get in a fight with your partner, like, that's okay. Just looking at, okay, if I say that my values are, I was not calling you out in that example, by the
You're
way.
totally calling me out. I have to tell this story. So
Okay.
I completely got into this kerfluffle with my partner, and it was not a big deal. It was not whatever. But I found myself, I went into my room and I actually turned on Netflix. And I wasn't even watching it. And then I got on my phone and I was like on social media and on Netflix, and I turned them both up like really loud, like so that I could just escape my own participation in this thing, right? And soothe myself. And I know that that arises out of my childhood growing up in this fairly emotionally dysregulated home, and
Mm-hmm.
being having a lot of access to media for what am I, an X? I'm an X. So I had, cable TV where there was a cord from the TV that went to a box that had buttons that you pushed. And this button was number channel 1, 2, 3, more. It was a huge box of buttons. Very analog situation. But I had this access, and so that was a soothing mechanism for me in my childhood. And I will still go back to that soothing mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
not the
with
most
this,
spiritual
though,
thing that I do.
well, but again, I'm using that example as like getting in a fight with your partner when you say your values are compassion and love doesn't mean you're not spiritual. It just means that's an ingrained pathway that then you apply your spiritual values to repair, or
Right.
to communication, or to whatever, or to, recognizing in yourself, just like here you are, acknowledging on this podcast, like, oh, that's a thing I totally did. I 100% did not mean to call you out on that. But
No, but
as an example,
I
Right.
think
But
it's
looking at,
good.
okay,
It's good
yeah.
because I think one of the pieces around toxic ascension culture is this
Hmm.
is this projection of the spiritual teacher that
Yeah.
that has this idealized version of self, this perfection, and
Hmm.
that is bullshit. You know,
Like pedestalizing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I did it. I saw myself do it. Witnessed, but so this is how you know that you're evolving is I saw myself do it. I was witnessing it happening in real time. I watched my body do it. Like I was witnessing everything about it and what my internal response was inside, what was happening. And then after a while, I was like, this is so silly. What are you doing? Good job, Kat. Great work. And
Hmm.
I turned it off and I was like, okay. And I went in the other room and I calmly had a conversation and reorganized the experience. But
Hmm.
I totally went to that space.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean I'm not
Yeah.
spiritual or that
Doesn't
I
mean you're
have
not spiritual.
so many tools to manage that experience.
Right. And this is, back to my whole like looking at how your spiritual identity shows up in all of these areas of your lives. You might have some sort of epiphany or reconciliation about like, oh, I say I'm spiritual, and yet my garage is like a total mess and I hate going in there and there's so much crap in there and I wonder why I'm stagnant in these areas of my life. For example, all of that to say, just look, just pay attention, just as a thing to help you figure out.
We've all got some things, right? Where we're like,
Yeah.
have some pieces of either coping mechanisms or stagnancies
Hmm.
or places that we're like, oh yeah, I still do that. Okay. All right.
Totally.
I still do that.
I
Um,
have this one box full of crap that has been with me for like 6 years, and every periodically I like go look at it and I open it and I try to problem solve how to get rid of it, and then I get overwhelmed and I stick it back where it was. 6 years, I'm not kidding. And so again, we all have it. We know it's there.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
And,
okay.
we have these, and, these things have been with us since childhood, and some of them we inherited. We inherited these pieces that are the coping mechanisms of our existence.
Hmm.
So don't be too hard on yourself, but look at it. Just look at it and laugh at it like I am, right? Like I
Hmm.
hope I'm giving you permission to go, "Oh yeah, there's where I do that again." And then just laugh at yourself because it is so funny how hard that a human will work to avoid pain or
Hmm.
conflict or something challenging. And that is what this whole episode is about, right? Is that this it is toxic to us to avoid the harder parts of ourselves.
Hmm.
And that's why that this whole ascension thing can be toxic to someone.
Yeah. So healthy. I don't even want to use the word ascension. Honestly, I want to talk about like evolution of consciousness. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I am committed to supporting evolution of consciousness in myself and in all beings on Earth. Yes, I am committed to actualizing the highest expression of this living temple of Gaia, that is Gaia. And yes, I am committed to bringing about the golden dawn era of radiance and thriving and sovereignty and love according to universal law of free will. Yes, all of those things,
Yeah.
minus the cringy parts.
um where were we? I had one more thing before I got on the silly story. But I can't remember it now.
Hmm.
Oh, this is it. One of the things that we can look at is how are we using our spiritual practice to dissociate,
Mm,
right? Or to, because you can use your spiritual practice in the same way that you use Netflix.
totally.
And it can be a way of dissociating and distancing yourself from challenging parts, and uh, for diluting ourselves. So that's another one.
Great. We'll just leave that right there and you all can think about that. Awesome. Well, anything else before we close? I think we
Well, I
gave
think
people a
there's
lot to
one
think
more
about.
piece that just has to be said is, okay, so if I'm not doing it this way, then what am I doing? And I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the salves, one of those words for this is embodiment, an embodiment practice, and drawing down into yourself and inhabiting yourself fully, and being in collaboration with earth energy and drawing energy up from the earth, and allowing that nurturing energy to come into your body, and grounding yourself and choosing earth, choosing this life, choosing to be present to everything that you are.
Beautiful.
That would be
Absolutely.
my antidotal.
Great. I agree. So with that, we invite you. If this resonates with you, then please share, please like, comment, subscribe. We're on all the channels, and if this is something that you're looking for in your life, if you're looking for support, both Katherine and myself offer one-on-one mentorship, various courses, etc., that you can tune into to learn how to cultivate your embodied, healthy, thriving relationship to your Earthwalk here on Gaia, and how to connect with evolution of consciousness that is aligned with your path and works in service to the benefit of all beings. So if you're interested, you can find my website, michellehawk.com, or you can find Katherine at katherinebird.com. And please stay tuned. Kat, is there anything in particular you want to invite people to look at?
I don't have anything right this exact moment, but I do have the Healer's
Mhm.
Process book and the Healer's Process practice manual that will be out 2024. So if you are
Awesome.
interested in that, I'll probably have a some sort of list or something you can join from my site soon, but you can also just join my regular list and reach out. Let me know, because that's going to be a really potent educational piece for anyone who's drawn to the path of the healer.
Absolutely. I will pre order many copies. And for those who are interested in alchemy, I did mention alchemy earlier in the context of this conversation. I am taking applications now for the upcoming 2024 cohort of I Am Alchemy, which is a year-long apprenticeship in shamanic alchemy, where we learn many different teachings and philosophy of alchemy, as well as practical application of these spiritual technologies of this mystery school. So you can find all of that information on my website, michellehawk.com. Look for the alchemy tab and submit your application.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Kat. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.